So welcome back. This is our second to last live stream in our sort of distributed telethon for today, for Giving Tuesday. I'm excited to be joined on the stage, the virtual stage, by Martin Strauss. Martin is a fellow of Odd Salon out of San Francisco, and he has really made himself known on the Odd Salon stage for lugging a keyboard and playing wonderful classical pieces along with his talks. So this is an extra amazing opportunity to see him at his home with his beautiful, actual, real full-size piano. He's going to be doing a little mini concert today and talking a little bit about Chopin, I believe, is the primary subject. Am I right?
That's right. Yes.
Thank you so much.
I get to play a real piano, and I'm going to take the opportunity to play a whole piece as well, because usually at Odd Salon, to fit around the story, I just
little tiny
excerpts.
bits. So Martin, we've been asking everybody as they come onto the live stream, what is something weird that you have learned during the pandemic?
I have learned that this is a whole lot less fun without all of you watching.
It's true.
I started the pandemic with a bunch of ideas for Odd Salon talks that I thought, you know what, I'm just going to spend time at the piano and get these just so that in a month or so, when all of this is over, I'll be perfect on stage. And then, you know, as time went on, I realized I really need the back and forth. So thank you.
Well, soon enough. I mean, the whole reason we're doing this whole thing and bringing all of our fellows and speakers from all over the place onto the stage tonight is to raise money, because we are going back to the live stage. We'll be back in San Francisco in December, and hopefully opening for the new season in San Francisco in February, and New York shortly thereafter. Right now, what we're really working on is rebuilding the nest egg so that we know that we can start the year with a little bit set aside. Since Odd Salon is a not-for-profit organization through our fiscal sponsorship, it's really important for us to know that we have a little bit of riskable cash so that we can go into things like venue rentals and stuff like that in a good place in the new year. So this what we're doing here today is just a really great way for us to know that we're starting back in the live theater on our feet and ready to do fun and interesting new things. So thank you so much for joining us. It's really, really, really means a ton to me and to Trey and to all of us at Odd Salon that you're taking the time to do this beautiful little musical piece tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I'm gonna hand this over to you. You can tell us a little bit about maybe before you start, just tell us a little bit about how you your relationship with this music. Like, how did you become a musician? How did you become interested in the musical history? How did you come to this story? And then you can tell us the rest. Dive in.
Well, so, I mean, the story my parents tell is that I was a restless child when I was 3 or 4 years old, and parents, as they will, talk with other parents, and the advice they got was that I was probably a curious child and I needed something to learn, and why not a piano? So they got a piano, and apparently that was it. The piece I'd like to present today is one of Chopin's Preludes, which are convenient because they're short, though I will play the longest of them. I'd like you to get your bingo card ready, because there's a story to this, and the story hits all the points of respiratory disease, quarantine, shipping delays, unusually extreme weather, and even, for today's purposes, giving. So the background to the Preludes were composed while Chopin was traveling. Chopin met the author Georges Sand at a party at Liszt's house in 1836. They started a relationship a few years later. The whole time Chopin was a sickly young man and suffered from tuberculosis. So there's your respiratory disease. And in the days before antibiotics, what you did was you went somewhere warm for the winter. And Chopin and Sand, for the winter of 1839, picked Majorca, which is an island off the coast of Spain. These days it's a party island like Ibiza. It's kind of the Cabo of Europe. You go there to see David Guetta or Daft Punk. In 1839, it was just a Mediterranean resort town. Chopin arrives with tuberculosis in the Mediterranean in the winter, and that year is unseasonably cold and rainy. So that's your second bingo point. So Chopin's cough gets worse, and the locals say, like, it's communicable. Would you mind quarantining out of town somewhere? So there you go, quarantine. There's an old former monastery over the mountains, a different coast, in a place called Valdemosa. They'll put you up for the winter. So that's where they went. And it was an old monastery that was no longer cared for, so it was leaky and it was cold and it was drafty. And so you can imagine this is the opposite of really what they wanted. But there was some isolation, so Chopin wanted to do some composing. So he sent to Paris and said, look, I have a really lovely piano. Please send it to me so I can compose some music. Which they said, yes, we'll do that. And then the piano disappeared and it got stuck in shipping and it got stuck in customs. And it finally arrived about a month before they were due to return back to Paris. So he wrote most of these preludes on a shitty borrowed piano that someone from the village was able to offer him. And when they were ready to leave, rather than try to get the piano back home, Chopin decided he'd make a gift of it and gave it to the manager of the bank where they'd open an account during their stay. So it's a very timely story for Giving Tuesday because there's some giving in it. And it gets better because the bank manager's descendants today still own the piano, and in fact it's the centerpiece of a little museum they run in the monastery cells where Chopin and Sand stayed in that winter. So, you know, small gift, make a big impact, do something really cool. Be like Chopin, donate to Odd Salon. Small gift could make something really cool happen. Anyway, back to the rainy winter. I mention the rain over and over again because the title of this now, I mean, titles in music are a funny thing. Most of the titles we know classical pieces by aren't actually given by the composers. Often they're given over the objections of the composers. Chopin in particular was quite unhappy about literally every title that some publisher insisted they needed to tack onto their preludes. And there's a whole Odd Salon talk I could give about that, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to play some music. So this is the 15th prelude. Forgive me, Frédéric, The Raindrop.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
That's one of the more somber pieces I think I've heard you play.
It is, I think. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's somber yet uplifting. It comes back to the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of,
Yeah.
you know, I think it really encapsulates this sort of feeling of, like, I can imagine Chopin sitting alone in his little monastery cell while Sand is out running errands,
Mm-hmm.
watching the rain drip down outside the window and inside the window, um,
Yeah.
finding beauty.
It is very atmospheric. So you said that the piano is in Majorca. Is that right?
Yes,
I've been to Majorca. I wish I had known that. Now I have a field trip back to Majorca pin in the map.
it is on my bucket list as well.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, you mentioned earlier that you started thinking about stories that you'd like to do on the stage before the pandemic hit. What's a example? What's a story that you'd love to bring to the stage that's been on your mind?
Well, I mean, the one that I decided to entirely omit from this because it's too good as a real story is the question of how do pieces get their titles. Um, and I mean, I realize I keep throwing back to odd salons. I mean, the Preludes, Chopin wrote 24 Preludes, one in each key, which is, if you remember Oddments a few years ago, um, everyone was inspired by Bach writing the well-tempered clavier of Preludes and Fugues, one in each key. So there's that throwback, but also Les Adieux, the Beethoven Sonata from several years back, is reasonably unusual because Beethoven wrote a very explicit title for it and said, "This is what I'm saying," where a lot of composers, and foremost Chopin, completely dismissed the idea that there were actual sounds of raindrops in this prelude. He wanted to present a feeling or the impression of what he was feeling as a result of what he saw, but not actually depict the things. And so the preludes actually have two different sets of titles, most of which are lost to us, or not lost to us, forgotten, deservedly so, from the two big first editions. It's just an interesting thing to kind of unpack. Debussy wrote his own set of 24 preludes, and he actually did give them titles because he knew it was going to happen sooner or later. But interestingly, Debussy's preludes, the titles appear after the music, in parentheses, and they're sort of suggestions of what you might consider if you needed a title. But if you don't need a title, don't look at this, just look at the music. That's
I think that's really interesting. It never
hours.
It never occurred to me that musicians wouldn't name their own pieces, first of all, and that or composers wouldn't name their own pieces, and then also that you see so many pieces with very similar, like to an outsider to classical music, you see so many pieces with just like prelude and a number, and it's so confusing. And it never occurred to me that maybe somebody else slapped that name on something, or when you see the more colorful names that somebody else, like what, a promoter or like somebody that's publishing sheet music.
Often the publisher, yes. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Well,
So,
I hope that we have an opportunity to do that story. I would really love to hear more about it. So I think we're going to wrap up this mini concert. Thank you so much, Martin. This was beautiful and lovely, and a beautiful way to sort of slowly seg to the end of our evening here. For those of you watching at home and paying attention to our Giving Tuesday, we are now at 13,599. Thank you all so much. This is super close to 3/4 of our goal, which we realize is optimistic in a tough year like this, year 2 of pandemic. But it means a ton to all of us to know that we have the support of our community and that people are looking forward to coming back to live, and our podcast project that's coming up as well, which has been just requested for years. So thank you to everyone who has already given. If you're watching this and you haven't thrown a few bucks in, now is your opportunity. The link is at the bottom of the page. It's bit.ly/odd giving. You can throw in any amount. Anything over $100 includes annual membership, which comes with a whole slew of perks, including discounts at the live salons, but also things that you can join online. So I think that's it for this one. Thank you so much again, Martin. This was charming and lovely, and a wonderful opportunity to get to see a whole piece in your home environment on a real piano.
Thank you.
Thank you.